Welcome to the Strap and Link podcast, where we cover brands from their inception to their latest release.
It's the Montress Tudor.
Like I said, better movement, spring drive
So,
potentially, Rolex Oyster Perpetual.
Their Super Ocean here. Now you see this kind of renaissance of Tudor. Finally, in 2016, they achieved the spring drive with an 8-day power. The podcast for watch lovers by watch lovers. New episodes every first and third Monday of the month.
All right, well, welcome back to the Strap and Link podcast, everybody. Of course, I'm your host, Brett, joined by my co-host, David.
Hello.
What's up, man? How you been?
I've been great. Very excited to hop back in to the Tudor world. I know we always kind of hint at it on a lot of episodes, but it'll be good to kind of talk about all the new releases and some very interesting stuff. I think it was a really good year to do an update on Tudor. I feel like a lot happened this year with those guys. They came out with a lot of new stuff, and I don't know if it'll be like that next year. So I think it's a good time to do it.
Yeah, so it's going to be super exciting, and we're going to run 2 watches each like we normally do. We're going to go into a little bit of those watches and just kind of the background and the history a little bit on that. So obviously we've already talked about the Tudor brand history itself. So that's kind of how we're going to structure these episodes. But really good time to do an update with obviously missing watches and wonders. The Tudor episode came out like 2 or 3 weeks before that. So basically everything we're going to talk about today, most of it at least, released again about a month later. So it's good timing, I feel like. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I wanted to just remind everyone, if you don't already, give us a follow on Instagram at Strap and Link. We're also on TikTok and YouTube at Strap and Link. So if that's your jam, feel free to find us there. DM us there with any questions, comments, or stories that you guys might have. Of course, if you want those answered or asked live on the next episode, that is. And also a new way to connect with us. Just wanted to let everyone know. Feel free to email us at strapandlink@gmail.com. We made an email address and account here just so that we could maybe just have like one spot for people to send things in. So if you do have a question that you want us to read out loud on mailbag, feel free to email us over there. And like I just mentioned a moment ago, if you've got like a cool story about any of your watches, feel free to send that over to us as well. I think, David, we're going to try to find a couple of those and maybe share. Hopefully we get enough to share at least one per episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's always cool hearing like, someone's granddad bought a watch when they were in Korea in this war, that war or something. Now it's been passed down to, their grandkid or great grandkid or something. Those types of things, or I don't know, you walk into an AD, a day later, they call you and say, hey, we got a Batman for you if you want it. So anything like that.
Cool stories are just how you got into watches. I know we have a lot of guys that listen that obviously are watch collectors. So how'd you get into it? Tell us a story about your first one. Was it your dad that brought you, uncle, whoever brought you to a watch store? Just tell us some history about your guys' collection. And, maybe the first brand. What was the first watch you ever bought? I know I've talked about my Fossil watches were the first ones I ever bought. So, everybody just kind of share some stories and we'll talk about them.
Yeah. Do you have anything off the top of your head that you might share, something like that? Like any, like what's like do you have like a crazy watch story at all? I don't really think that I do. So it's not to like put you on the spot because I feel like I don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll have to think about it during the episode. I'm sure something will come to mind, but most of mine, like I said, it was just I would every $50 I would make, I would go buy another Fossil. I was lucky enough to get a factory store of those right next to where I grew up. So, I think it was really funny. I never realized how good of a deal it was, I think, until I started going to like, again, these are talking about the, Fossil watches and stuff, but I'd go to like a Belk or something and the same watch that I'd buy for $75 at their factory store would be like $200 at Belk. And I think that's why to this day, I've never bought a watch from any of those like major chains like that, the Macy's and all. I know a lot of people will buy their first watch from something like that, but I just always was turned off. And even in my young, 12, 15-year-old brain, I thought
you still recognize
watches
that
are
you're
so
like, that's
overpriced. Yeah, I felt like they were always overpriced. So I know a lot of people, that's where they get their first watches, but I guess just luckily it went out of business after about 2 years, the Fossil factory store. But during those 2 years, it kind of just ingrained in my head like you better find a good deal on, and I think I still carry that to this day of just if we're going to buy a watch that might lose value after purchase. A lot of the times I'm always still hunting for that deal.
Okay. So I would say, yeah, that's definitely along the same lines right there. That like that
Mhm.
taught you from a very like from your first watch sourcing and
Mhm.
hunting and purchasing
That watch
experiences.
prices will value based on the
Yeah.
seller. So
Yeah.
even, got to watch out for the guys that will rip you off, or got to watch out that, hey, I don't want to talk bad about any ADs or anything, but I mean, hey, if, this AD selling it for list price and it's not
Hmm.
a Rolex or something, so just say it's a Breitling,
Or a
they're
tutor.
selling it for, yeah, Tudor, they'll sell it for list price, but you can find it online in one of the club, the Facebook
Mm,
groups, a year old, and the guy's in the same city as you, so you could go see it in person before you bought it. I mean, that's to
yeah.
me a no-brainer. I'm always looking for those type of backdoor alleys to
Yeah.
find the same watch, and I think in the long run it'll help you not get burned, especially when you're talking about these $1,000 investments, because a lot of the time, as we know, we'll buy a watch and there are very few that'll hold that same value.
Yeah.
So I think it's always smart to at least try to get a little value buy for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'm kind of going through that now with, I'm looking at some tutors and some Breitlings and all that good stuff, as we do as watch collectors. So you're constantly bouncing between different ADs and looking,
Yeah.
like you said, online at, like appreciation groups or, owner groups or something like that. And you're finding some
Yep.
for sale. And I'm kind of going through that now where, we've talked about it a little bit on the show, but the idea of just buying everything brand new, just for the sake of buying everything brand new, I think that's like novel maybe at first, and then it wears off on you because to your point, you can find um, a watch 6 or 12 or 18 months old for 10 to 50% off the retail cost,
Yeah.
depending on the brand, obviously. So there's deals to be found, and um, yeah, like I said, I'm going through that now, trying to sell a Grand Seiko to use that to fund a new diver, and bought the Grand
Yeah.
Seiko at retail, and now struggling to sell it. But struggling to sell it because I refuse to take too little for it.
Yeah.
I could take a 25 or 30% cut on it, but who wants to do that? So,
Yeah.
um,
And that's the biggest thing. I think after I know you bought it, the Monta, aftermarket,
mhm,
the what is it type of white
the
dial
Opaline
is what I
dial,
yeah,
yeah,
Oakland dial. Once you hit that first, hey, I bought it aftermarket, and you realize, this is the same, it's a
yeah,
great watch. It's
and you
not
don't
like
get
you bought a
burned.
piece of crap, you didn't get burnt. I
Yeah,
understand if you get burnt once, and that's why you always need to be careful. I mean, I won't buy I won't buy a Rolex from somebody I don't know from across
yeah,
the country.
yeah,
There's just no way I'd do that. You got to be careful. You can't just be fruitless with your spending on, hey, this guy out in California and New York when you're living in Georgia.
mhm.
You don't know, you can't see it. But if
It's
there's
a lot of
somebody in
risk.
Atlanta, there's somebody in Birmingham, Nashville that's drivable. That's when I think you really need to keep an eye out for that. And that's why it helps, honestly, being in a lot of these groups on
Yeah,
Facebook. Yeah, you get to see some cool watches, but I mean, there's always you get help with pricing. I mean, I get people
yeah,
calling me all the time, "Hey, what are Batman selling for right around now?" And I'm always seeing it every time you get on Facebook or Reddit or anything. You're always seeing things for sale, so you kind of have in the back of your mind, well, normally they're selling from 14 to 16,000 right now.
yeah,
So you're always kind of up in the most recent, spending or selling points for
right, right,
big Rolexes like that. So you always kind of know what you're getting
yeah,
is helpful for yourself not to get burnt.
yeah. I've got a friend looking to buy his first, or a family friend would be more accurate, looking to buy his first Rolex. And so I've talked to him a lot over the last couple of weeks, and that's one of the things that comes up with Rolex, and particularly someone buying their first, because we all
Mhm.
know it's hard to get them at retail, and so you have to figure out like what route am I going to go? Is it going to be
Yeah.
pre-owned, and then if it is pre-owned, is it going to be a model that doesn't maybe retain as much, like an Air King and OP, or is it going to be a Yachtmaster full gold that's doubled in cost or something?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, there
so
there are definitely some great. I mean, Cape Town is a great resource. They
yeah,
have one in Atlanta and then another shop in California. There's very trusted aftermarket sellers, and they're one of them. That hey, you might pay an extra $500 from Joe Blow. You bought it off the street, but they always come with box and papers. They always
yeah.
come with their own lifetime warranty.
I
There's
actually
you
told
can
him to go there. It
yeah
took me a while to remember it, and then after about a week, I was like, "Man, I totally forgot about
yeah
this place, but check it out." And I ran a
yeah.
search for the model that he wanted, came back with 10 different options. So,
Yeah, that's a very good resource. Even West Coast people, they have one in California. My family personally has probably bought 10 watches from there. And I
From
mean, from Cape Town alone, and mostly Rolexes, some Breitlings as well. But, they'll ship them in from California and have them in a day. And,
yeah,
it's not a plug for Cape Town, but
yeah,
they're very trusted people. And you'll find those, in whatever city you're in. I know there's a ton in New York, Chicago, but you just got to find that right dealer that's one, not going to rip you off. Because, yeah, I can run to Mayors and Lennox in Atlanta, and they have 20 certified pre-owned subs, but I mean they're all very expensive.
yeah,
To go straight to an AD and try to find a certified pre-owned, there's a lot better options that are still very trusted, shops and
yeah,
jewelry stores that I think you could find. So it's just navigating the waves of not getting burnt from somebody spamming you to finding the right
yeah,
store, and it's trial and error, definitely.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a whole process for sure. Cool. Well, you ready to jump into some new tutors and
Yeah.
yeah, get this
Yeah,
thing
I
rolling?
think
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'll start it out today. We're just gonna, I guess, really start to probably what's the most common, what's the most similar to their old models, which is the Black Bay 54, in my opinion. The Black Bay, kind of the quick history of the Black Bay here. It came out originally in 2012 at a 41 millimeter. It was just a modern dive take on their inspiration from a vintage Rolex and Tudor Submariners. And then in 2018, they came out with their most popular, the Black Bay 58, which is a scaled down version of that, going from 41 millimeters down to 39 millimeters. A very big retro stunner that, took the world by storm. And this is actually modeled after their 1958 vintage watch. And then in 2023, they came out with the Black Bay 54, which, as you can probably guess here, going from 1958 to 1954 when it's based off of. And again, this is just a smaller version, just a much more retro look. There's a few changes. Of course, everybody I think that follows us on social media has seen Brett's Black Bay 58 that has the gilted letterings, numbers, beautiful black dial, beautiful watch itself. The only really difference here is, of course, the size. You're going from 39 millimeters to 37, and then your bezel will not have the gilted numbers like the Black Bay 58. It'll go more towards the old style Submariner, even some of the newer Submariners that, like I have today. You have your silver on the bezel, and that's what you'll have on the Black Bay 54. So kind of mixing it up with the gilded inside and then silver and white bezel on the numbers. And I think the only other difference, Brett, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 hour markers on the bezels are not numbered. Is that correct? Is that normally numbered on the Black Bay 58, or is that how it is on the 58 as well?
So the bezel update change, it's like it's the 1 through 15 minute countdown is
Okay.
basically what they removed. So, like think like, dive bezel, it's, effectively it's just a 60-minute countdown timer function,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the only thing that it
Yeah.
functions as, right? You spin it
Yeah.
at a starting point and then you count down. So, and I remember reading this a while back. The reason that a lot of them are ticked from the 1 to 15 minute is because
Mhm.
that is, and again, this is just, I'm just kind of trying to pull this from memory, but that you're descending, as a diver, you're descending down to that depth that you're going to be
Mhm.
at, I believe, in that first 15 minutes. And it's something to just basically reference that, like, once you reach the 15th minute, that you're like halfway through like your oxygen or something like that. I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure, but it's just like an easier way. And especially some of them, you could tell me this because I don't own a Submariner, but like you have those ticks. I don't know if those are loomed. I'm sure like on some dive bezels, those ticks are loomed
Yeah,
because again,
they're
it's a
not loomed
fairly
on the sub. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, on the
Okay. Yeah.
16,
Yeah.
610, they're not. I'm not sure, but obviously I don't have the
Okay.
newer version, but I don't believe they are. The
Okay.
only loom is on the hour markers. But yeah, you'll notice that on a
Okay.
lot of dive watches, that is true. The ticks on the 1 through 15. So,
Yeah, it's some kind of like significant reference point where when you get to that 15th minute, I'm sure a diver is listening, like you guys are a bunch of idiots, but that's basically just been removed. So it it,
yeah.
it does give that bezel like a very clean look. It's very symmetrical, um, and clean as a result of it. But yeah, that's pretty much the big difference. I think like the font and everything is pretty much the same. Just kind of it
Yeah,
just
it's
cleans
very
it up a
similar.
little bit.
Again, like we were saying, this is why we wanted to really start with this, because I think this is probably one of the most similar revamps. They just cleaned it up a little bit. Of course, we'll sit here in a second and talk about the size differences, what we feel about
Mm-hmm.
that going from 39 to 37, because every time they come out with a new version of this,
Seems
they
to
go
get
smaller. So it was 41, which 40 is my happy medium. Of course, my sub's a 40. 41 is also very nice. So I love that. The 39 is the bottom of the barrel for like how small I would want to go with my wrist size. But of course, I have a Tudor Black Bay 58, the navy version of it, and it still fits and it still rocks. It's just very subtle dive watch. So going to the 37, that's definitely a discussion for a lot of guys. I have a lot of friends that have smaller wrist, and they hey man, they love the 39, so they really love the 37.
Yeah.
But let me just run through a couple more specs here just so you guys know. So of course this is a modern take on the Tudor's first dive watch, which reference number 7922 in 1954. And this new reference number for the Black Bay 54 is 79000. So if you want to look up reference numbers, this has a 70-hour power reserve, just like most subs and other Rolexes and Tudors alike. Beats at 4 hertz. It is the caliber movement of MT 5400 Cox certified, so that is 200 meters of water resistance. The biggest thing here is it is right at 11.2 millimeters case thickness. If you want to compare that with like the new Pelagos that I think Brett will talk about today, or I know we've talked about a lot in the past, that is I think 11.84. And so you're thinking, hey, 11.24 to 11.84, there's not a big difference. But if you wear these two, they're completely different. Just
Mm-hmm.
the thickness, they just seem like two completely different watches. So that whatever 6/10 of a millimeter is a big difference here. So the 11.24, it does wear pretty tiny again, but that's what a lot of people like. They like the slicker smaller version, 37 millimeters. Everything else I think we've really spoken about. Of course, this only comes, which I don't know if I love, or it's kind of special, so maybe it is a good idea, but it only comes in the black and gilded dial. So there's no navy version, there's no any other colors other than the black, and then it comes in the normal oyster bracelet that they always release with all their Black Bays, and then it also comes in a rubber strap option. Yeah, and it beats the NATO. I'd rather be on rubber than NATO. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think I would be too. Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting watch. I mean, I definitely think it's a little too small. I mean, if that is, I don't know. There's the one part of me that does say that it's a little bit too small. Like the idea of a 37 millimeter diver today, for me and just my personal preference, I think that that's small. But I guess on the other hand, if we look at it, we say, well, Tudor are still making the Heritage Black Bay. We'll talk about that in a moment. They're still making the Black Bay 58. So it's not like they took anything away from you. It's not like they replaced the 41 or the 39 millimeter options. So, I don't know. Maybe Tudor were thinking about it that way and going for like the most mass appealing watch that they possibly could find. One that, is small enough to fit, to fit a lady's wrist. If there's any woman out there that is just really into dive watches, especially kind of a more vintage looking dive watch, I don't know. Perhaps that's something that they were thinking about. So, yeah, I guess to stay on the brighter and more positive side of things, this new collection, the 54, albeit limited, it's just one variation. There's no colors to this. There's really just the rub, as you mentioned, the rubber and the oyster options. But again, if nothing else, maybe this is just, one more market to serve. It's another
it's
diver
pretty
in a different.
impressive, I feel like, to just have it in such a small case, 200
Yeah.
meters and in a very small diameter and, case thickness. It is, in that way, it does stand alone and is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so if you want to look at it in that way.
Yeah. And Tudor are, I think some other notable updates, and this is kind of just across the board with a lot of their watches. Unlike the Black Bay 58, all of these new models, sans the Tudor Royal that we're going to talk about today, I believe they all come now with the T-Fit system. So you get the points of micro adjustment that we didn't have on like or that we still, I guess, don't have on the Black Bay 58. I don't think that they've updated that. Maybe they did, but I know at the time when like you and I bought ours in 20,
We don't have
around
it.
20 and 21. And even 22, that's not available. There were no rubber options that were OEM. So if you're someone like David and I, you had to go buy a 200 anywhere from a $50 to like a $300 rubber bracelet or
Yeah.
rubber strap rather. So it's nice to see that they're offering some of that, and that's why again, like I tend to lean more on the positive side of this, and I just say, okay, you're giving us micro adjustments and rubber
Hmm.
options and a smaller case offering. So generally, I think it's another strike for Tudor that says this is mass appeal. We just want to knock this out of the park, plain simple. We're going to look back at our own vintage catalog and yeah, make a
Yeah.
new offering. So
Well, and the last thing here, obviously, these watches are pretty hard to get at the moment because everybody wants
that's
them. They're
true.
rare. You are paying pretty much, if not exactly, the same amount you would for a Black Bay 58 for these. So you're paying $3,700 for the rubber option and $3,900 for the oyster bracelet. You can look at that. Well, you're paying the exact same for a smaller, lesser watch, or you're looking,
Yeah.
hey, well, I'm paying the exact same for a limited edition. So again, you can play
Yeah.
both sides of the field there. But I thought it was interesting that they're not, raking this up for, limited edition sake, or they're not knocking it down because hey, it is a smaller diameter, smaller everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The very last thing I was going to mention before we jump over to the Pelagos FXD, I had mentioned it just a minute ago that the Black Bay 54 only is offered in this accented dial with just the flat black and white / kind of gray markings on the bezel.
Hmm.
I will be interested to see if they offer this in their other colors. We've never seen, or which I don't know if ever Tudor released a green dial diver, but we don't have any green divers. We have some blues, obviously, and we
Hmm.
have some red bezels. So I'll be interested to see if next year, around March and the summer timeframe, if Tudor do or do not release any additional offerings there. I don't recall off the top of my head when the Black Bay initially came out in 2012 if the only option was the black dial burgundy bezel. I want to say that
Yeah.
it was, but I really don't recall if that was it. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And then on the flip side to that, I'm also going to be interested to see if anything gets discontinued from either the Heritage or the 58 line. So that's something else because right now the 58 and the Heritage line basically offer the same thing. When it comes to like
Hmm.
colorways, um, I think that it's like a 1-for-1 copy. So all the different combinations and colorways you can get in each. The 54 is now the oddball. So we'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, we're about 25 minutes in, so let's jump over to the Pelagos FXD. We'll start with a little bit of background on this watch. It's a newer, probably the newest release to all of these that we're going to talk about today. So, a little bit of Pelagos history. We never actually did the Pelagos on episode 1 of Tudor, so the Pelagos was Tudor's, like actual answer to a dive watch when it came to like an original piece.
Hmm.
There's no Tudor Pelagos that exist from the 1950s or 60s or so on and so forth. So when this was released in 2012, along with the Black Bay, I suppose, that was their answer to its own original diver. It's a beefy watch. If you've never held one in person or checked it out, it's definitely a beefy, thick watch. We've already talked about that. The Pelagos 39 models, most of them, if not all, are going to be offered in a 500-meter water resistance rating on a titanium bracelet, which offsets some of that weight. In-house cost certified movement, like we've already talked about. But the Pelagos FXD is really cool because not only is it this special edition Pelagos in the sense that we got more than just a different color, but it actually looks and it actually operates completely different from the original Pelagos. This watch traces its roots back to the 50s and the 60s when the United States Navy actually they standard issued Tudor submariners to underwater demolition divers, the Navy SEALs again. I know we just talked about them on the Hamilton episode. So, yeah, that's really cool, I think. Um, one point before I move further on the background of this, I said that this is different from the original Pelagos. The bezel is really, really nice on this thing. The entire bezel is loomed. So we talked about the 1 through 15 ticks on the Black Bay. The Pelagos also has that. The original Pelagos has that on the 1 to 15. It's got the minute ticks. The
Hmm.
FXD has a tick for all 60 minutes around the bezel, and everything on the bezel is loomed. So it's really cool. The bezel is also color matched, and it is, I believe, if I am not mistaken here, I believe that the bezel insert is ceramic. and it's color matched to the dial color. So there's a perfect match there. It's really, really sexy in person. And the whole thing is loomed. The click motion is so smooth. So it actually is a different like watch than the Pelagos. So that's really cool. And I read in an article from 2017 where a former Navy diver talked about his Navy issued sub from Buds, which is basically basic training for Navy SEALs. If anyone didn't know that, he said that enlisted men got black dial Tudor subs, officers got blue dial Tudor subs. So I thought that was like really, really awesome. And then the last thing about this is that the first ever edition of the Underwater Demolition Team Handbook that future or aspiring Navy SEALs would receive in 1965, the very first edition of this, so cool, actually had a Tudor Oyster Prince Submariner, reference number 7928, next to the diving watch paragraph. So, open up, you've got a dive watch, they tell you how to use it. These guys, roughnecks in Texas and wherever, right? Probably never, use the dive watch, or maybe they have. I don't know, but it tells you, and it's a Tudor sub. So very, very cool. So to move on to the FXD, let's talk about what makes this thing so special. Case diameter is going to be titanium, again, just like the regular Pelagos. It's going to be 42 millimeter diver. I can attest, though, it wears more like a 40 and a half, maybe a 41. It's very slim. The case thickness on this is 12.75. So despite the number being 12, and we talk about like a lot of 10s and 11s for some of these sport watches, I don't really think that it was very thick whenever I put this thing on. Water resistance on this is 200 meters, though. So you do get not as much water resistance there, and the name FXD, as that suggests, means actually fixed lugs. That's the big downside of this. There's no bracelet offering. So FXD, fixed lugs, it's going to be not that thick of a diver, but only in 200 meters of water resistance, which I personally think is fine. Manufacturer calendar from Tudor here, the MT5602, also costs certified, beats 28,800 beats per hour, which is 4 hertz. Meaning that it also has a 70-hour power reserve. So they're going to use very similar movements and versions of movements across most of their divers. The cost variation here, kind of wide range. Lowest end is going to be 3,700 and some change US, and then 5,175 for the titanium case, titanium bezel, kind of special edition. I think it's one of the Red Bull racing models that has that titanium bezel. But for the for kind of like the 3 most popular models, all titanium cases, and then just regular bezels, regular dials, all that good stuff, can be $4,150. And to me, we talked about like what makes this thing cool. I love that it's different than the actual Pelagos. It's more refined too, believe it or not. Even with the strap, the bezel is smoother. It's way more satisfying. The dial, to me, is just executed better. Like objectively, I think whenever you look at those two side by side, it's kind of a no-brainer. But like I said, the fixed lugs, man, that's what, I don't know. When I first like held this watch, I was like, this is perfect. I would love this to be the next diver that I have. I'm looking for a blue dive watch right now. I love the Tudor blue. I've talked about that, but I can't get over the fact that you just don't have a bracelet option.
Yeah, that's a big downfall for a great watch. That's the problem.
Well, and you know what the kind of the double whammy about that is I just I kind of talked and gave reasons why I personally think this watch is cool, and the differences between the FXD and the Pelagos, just the regular Pelagos 39 mil version. I love everything more about the FXD. Everything, all the design, the look of it, the feel of it. I just hate that there's no bracelet option.
Yeah.
So it's got, you can put a single pass like leather strap or rubber if you wanted to. But if you're someone like David and I, where that's not your go-to, sadly, it kind of makes this watch like just off the market for you. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough pill to swallow, and it's one of those pills that, you can buy it, but I think, after a couple months, you'll be regretting it, unless you can get it aftermarket for a great price, like we talked about at the beginning.
And they're not trading that low right now.
No,
that's the sad thing.
Yeah. They're new.
Like I said, they're 40. Yeah, they're 4,150 retail. The lowest I've seen them trade aftermarket is 3,700, and those are still for sale, which tells me no one's buying them for 3,700.
Yeah.
So
I'll offer 3 and run.
Yeah. So I don't. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. Is like I don't know if that means that they have been sold and they're going to sell for that, or that they haven't and you could lowball. I think it's just too new of a watch to really figure out. What
I still wouldn't even pay 3 for this with that strap. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know me and how I feel about them. Obviously, it's better than
I'm
the
the same
normal
way.
NATO, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've held Pelagoses. They're not my favorite personally. I know Brett likes them more. I like the Black Bay 58 kind of more, just personally, like the Navy, the one I have. But I held the original Pelagos. I had it with the titanium. It was good. It's very different. It's
Hmm.
very I don't even know how to say, like, bolder. It's much more
It is.
bold watch. And normally that's something I would like more, a bigger watch. But I think just having this Navy Black Bay 58 for so long has kind of grown me towards that direction. You know, I don't know. It's one of those watches that keeps you torn at night. You
Yeah.
see it some days and you're like, dang, that's beautiful. And then you see it others and you're like, it
Well,
doesn't
when
do
I
much
see it
for
in pictures after now having, after spending some time with it,
me. Mm-hmm.
excuse me, whenever I see it in pictures now, I'm like, damn, like I know that watch is cool, but again,
Yeah.
like I just can't get over it. And I mean, I prefer the Black Bay 50 or the Black Bay lineup to the
Yeah.
Pelagos 39. I
Yeah.
prefer this potentially, at least the dial and the bezel combination to, again, potentially to the Black Bay. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I just don't think I could live with a strap for the only option because I just posted a picture to our Instagram like 3 days before this episode released. We're recording it the day of, so I just posted this picture. The Black Bay 58, like I love it, but we put those rubber straps on it, and for like the longest time, I just never wore it. And we
Yeah.
talked about that when Miguel was on a few episodes back. We kind of talked about that, and I was like,
Yeah, you
I
really fell
traveled with
apart
it.
from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was saying like I traveled with it, and that was the only one that I took on this kind of like weekend trip. You guys were kind of asking me like, well, did that do anything for you? And my response was like, kind of whatever. When I got back, I took that strap off of it and I left it off. I got a new strap and I threw it on. I like it. It's cool every now and then. But that really was it for me. Like, when I left it back on the bracelet, I kind of rediscovered that whole watch, and I was like, all right,
Yeah.
this was the dive watch that when I saw it in the
Me too.
store,
Yep.
I just knew that was the dive watch. I knew I did not want a Rolex. They were too big for my liking. That package was perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I just know the FXD is not for me. It's a shame, but nonetheless, it I think is still a really cool watch. Just because it's not for us doesn't mean there's plenty of people that like straps,
Oh yeah. And they
and
prefer it.
yeah, and I say that to just say if you're a Tudor fan, you're fine with the strap thing, but you haven't checked this out, please go check it out
Yeah.
because it's a grand cheaper than the Pelagos 39. I just explained why I think it's better than the Pelagos 39 if you can get over the strap. So if you haven't seen it,
Mm-hmm.
definitely go check it out because it's a very, very fun watch, and I think blows the Pelagos 39 out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, definitely. Very good watch, but again, just got to be your style. And I mean,
yeah,
I agree the same thing. When I bought the Black Bay 58, of course, I bought it with the oyster bracelet. And then, I kind of got bored of it. I think we both did after a while. And I ended up buying the velvet. I keep calling it velvet, strap that
yeah,
was on the blue, and it was great. And I wore it all last winter. So about a year ago, probably about a year ago now, I put it on and wore it until March of this year.
yeah.
And a great, it brought it and made a different feel for it. But the only downfall to me about that is the Black Bay, and it is for anything. The Black Bay 58 to me, that watch I wear as a beater almost, like when I'm
Hmm.
not dressed up, when I'm just low key. It's my low key watch. I'm going to the store, I'm running to drinks at night, whatever. Not trying to impress anything. So putting it on that velvet strap, it was like such a dressy strap. Then the watch
Yeah.
itself was just kind of, it was there. It was just the same diver watch. And then I put it on the rubber strap for the summer. And that, again, it was great for a while. But after about a month of having it on there, I was just like, the real reason I never took it off because it was so hard putting that rubber strap on
I
that I was like, I didn't want to have to worry about taking it off. So I kept it on for, probably 2-3 months too long.
yeah.
And then once I finally went back after about a year and a half of having not the oyster bracelet on it, it was great. And
Did you kind of
like you
go through
said, you
that?
re-fell in love with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I was just gonna say that like that's the cool thing about straps. They'll change up the look of a watch, but the
Mm-hmm.
Tudor Black, I don't know what and why it is, but the Black Bay 58 bracelet is a bitch to get back on.
Yeah.
I know that I have like a cheap spring bar tool, but guess what? Grand Seiko has drilled lugs super easy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've Well, no, I haven't messed with your Rolex, but on the Manta, easy
Yeah.
to pop off.
I
Like
know the
everything I have.
Rolex is easy to pop off because my dad has the exact same one, and he took off his bracelet to put on a rubber one.
Yeah,
And if that man can do it,
yeah,
then we can
and
easily do it because he can't do anything with watches.
my point there is
Yeah.
the rubber B straps that we have. They use the Tudor OEM spring bar, which
Hmm.
means there's no quick release.
Yep.
And the Tudor Oyster style bracelet that's offered also has no quick release. And I just said it's a bitch. It's not hard to get off. It's way harder to get back on.
On.
My
Yeah.
point being, those straps, while they might only work for someone for like 2 weeks at a time, if we just had a quick release option, we could do that all the time. If you want to go
Yeah.
out to a nice dinner with your wife or something, throw that suede one on. And then if you're
Hmm.
going if you're on a beach vacation and the next day you're like, oh, I just want to wear it out to the beach, put the rubber on because it
Rubber.
takes
Yep.
10 seconds. But when you
Yep.
got to break out 3 tools and it
And
takes
sit there for an
15 minutes,
hour.
yeah.
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 So I think we both kind of went through that. We both put the bracelet back on and then both got back to like, all right, that's the
I
that's
think
the
it's just
tool
the
watch
most
that I wanted.
versatile. Yeah, it's the most
Yeah.
versatile. And I mean, that's still, it can be dressed up to an
Yeah.
extent. And then, I mean, and then it's also sporty. It's just the way to go when it's hard to take on and off the straps. It's the way to
Yeah.
go because it keeps you happiest the longest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cuz I'm not spending 20 minutes in the morning messing with a strap that's going to match this one out. I'm just going to pick a different watch.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, kind of shifting gears here, we'll talk about a watch that I think is very divisive in the Tudor community. Um, it's an interesting watch that's caught my attention the last few times I've been to the AD in Atlanta. It's called the Tudor Royal. So this, to me, I mean, let's call an ace and spade a spade. I'm always give you my opinion, and you can disagree with it. Brett will half the time, and if he doesn't, I'm sure somebody out there will. This is their version of a date just or day date. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's their dressier watch. It was unveiled quietly in July for only a handful of Asian markets actually to start with, and then it was worldwide released in November of 2020. So it had a few months, July of 2020 initially released. So it had a
Okay.
few months in just the Asian market before the worldwide release. And it's a lightly retro wristwatch with an integrated bracelet and kind of that mixture between a sport and luxury watch, but for a decidedly entry level money for what
Mm.
Tudor is. You're talking starting around 2K and going up to tops 4,500. So again, the pricing there is pretty great for a dress watch. If you again want something like a date just or especially a day date, come here if you can't afford the Rolex and you want a good dress watch for the quality, you're getting a big bang for your buck here. Again, but this always comes with a little divisiveness where people are, hey, it's just a knockoff again. It's the poor man's Rolex. It's the blah blah blah. So there are a lot of people that hate on this type of watch, but to me, I mean, I've seen them in person. They're great for the value. They're a heck of a watch. It's available actually in 4 sizes. So again, just like the Datejust, you'll see me compare these two a lot. The 41, Datejust 41, they offer it also in a 38, 34, and 28. So they have this in women's sizes as well. And I'll talk about probably the best bang for your buck I've ever seen for a woman's watch in a second. But to have the day date function, you have to go with the 41 millimeter case. So that's the only one that's available with the day date movement. The inside is the T603 movement, which is a Soletta SW240. And that is in turn really a clone of the ETA movement 2824 with an additional day date function. So it's, again, that's probably how they're keeping the price point down. It's very similar to the ETA movements.
I had no
But
idea.
again, a lot of people don't care. If you don't
Yeah.
care, if you're me personally, if I'm like, okay, if I'm buying this for, a girlfriend or something that doesn't really care, but they just want a great brand name and stuff. And for me personally, a lot of the time movements I don't care about. This
Yeah.
is a great bang for your buck. But the one downfall, probably the biggest downfall besides, if you want to compare it to anything, is going to be your 38-hour power reserve. So, unless you're wearing this watch every day and this is your daily work watch, which it could very easily be, it will be hard. You'll have to keep it on a watch winder. Trying to think anything else about this watch. Again, they offer it in vast different arrays of colors, dials, Roman numerals, diamond studs. mother of pearl diamonds, diamond bezel, two-tone, single stainless steel bracelet. All the options that Rolex is on for their Datejust, Tudor knows for their Royal. I mean, this is just what they've made to copy their predecessor, their sister company. And I think they do it pretty well. For what I was saying earlier, I decked out a watch, so I know somebody that wants a 28 millimeter R26 millimeter, diamond bezel, diamond studs,
Oh,
mother of pearl, dial, two-tone Rolex. That's what they want. You make that bad boy up, that's about $20,000 on Rolex
yep.
new. You can buy it aftermarket and you're still spending 10, 12, 14, depending on the year. And Jubilee bracelet. So, and as we all know,
Would that be
Jubilees
a
over
date
time,
just?
yeah, that'd be a
Okay.
Datejust.
Okay.
Over time, those Jubilees will stretch. So I said there, yeah, I can find a cheaper watch just like that, but it's gonna be 30 years old, and the
Mm,
Jubilee bracelet's gonna be stretched. You know how it goes.
it's gonna sag
This
and yeah.
watch I made completely custom. 28 millimeter diamond hour markers, diamond bezel, all factory mother pearl
Is that the
dial,
picture
two
that you
tone.
shared?
Yep, that
Okay.
we
What's
shared.
up?
We'll show this two-tone bracelet, $4,500, I believe it was,
Mm,
right
mm,
at 5K, maybe 55. It was right around 5K.
yeah.
Completely tracked out, brand new. I mean, it's just a no-brainer if they don't care. If you want a great quality watch, again, from a great brand, a recognizable brand, mother of pearl. You can't find mother of pearl diamonds dials
Dials.
aftermarket half
Hmm.
the time now, and especially you can't find the mother of pearl with everything else exactly how you want it. A lot of people I know will get the mother of pearl and then aftermarket put diamond bezels on, which I mean is definitely something you could do. But if you want it all in house, $5,000 for that tricked out of a lady's watch of 28 millimeters is a great value.
Yeah, I think similar to you, I've considered getting this for my wife. She's admittedly not a big watch person, but
Hmm.
it's yeah, I mean, I think it plays more to like a lady's watch. I just think that which
It's
is like
very
weird,
thin. It's
because
very
yeah.
thin, kind of surprisingly, kind of in no way comparing these two, but we always talk about how the Royal Oak is very, is wide, but it's
Hmm.
very thin.
Yeah.
This is the same way. The 41 millimeter, they have these always at a Mayors in Atlanta. The 41
Yeah.
millimeter, they have exactly the Datejust 41 that I want, that I've talked about will be my next Rolex. They have
But
that exact watch, but in this Tudor Royal version, 41, the exact same watch, diamond
mhm.
bezels, the whole 9 yards. And I've worn it a few times. It's wide, like you would expect a 41 to be, but it's very thin. So
Yeah.
that again can turn some people off, can turn some people onto it, just whatever you like. But
Yeah.
do be aware it's I think it's actually under 11 millimeters. Let me check that. But I think it's right under
It's probably
11
very
millimeters
thin,
thick.
if I had
Yeah.
to guess, yeah. And I mean, you're right. I mean, it sounds funny, to compare a Tudor Royal and a AP Royal Oak, but the case, I mean, the silhouette, the case shape is not the same, but the silhouette of the entire watch, like you said, it's an integrated bracelet watch, so
Hmm.
it does have a very similar vibe. And yeah, I mean, I think it plays, like I said, I do think this one specifically, the Royal, plays more to ladies because of that case shape and silhouette. I just don't think that it's as popular.
No,
Um,
definitely
the
not.
I think
It's even been described as a flop on some websites that I was finding just because of it's really not caught the traction that I think they hoped it would, like
yeah,
thinking it maybe would catch traction like the date just did.
yeah,
One very before you step off in that, let me just
yeah.
mention this as well. One very divisive part of this watch as well is their version of the fluted bezel. So it's like an alternating smooth to
Yeah,
fluted bezel. So it's very different. Again, we'll always post pictures of these watches for you guys to see on social media. That's why you should follow us. But it's a very
indeed.
different take. It's kind of like Omega's take on a fluted bezel, which I think is very divisive and could be cool, could be taken as a knockoff version.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody does fluted like Rolex. We all know this. But that is a very divisive part of this watch as well. Some people love it. And I've seen many websites that will say if they would just turn this to a completely smooth bezel, it would made the watch 10
Yeah.
times better. I don't know if I agree with that because I really hate the smooth bezel on Datejust. I think we were talking about that the other day. We just like the fluted bezels on Datejust. It just makes it pop. So I don't know if I would agree with that, but it is very different and divisive, this bezel. If you haven't seen it, we'll post it and you can kind of put your input in it as well.
Yeah. I actually will agree with you, or I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I actually will
Oh,
disagree with you on
there it is.
your sort of stance, but I don't think that I don't think that you'll disagree with my reasoning here. So
Okay.
I think that the Royal, I definitely see what you're saying, where that can look like the sort of Datejust day date option that Tudor is providing in contrast. However, I think that the real comparison is the Black Bay 36 slash like the non-diver Black Bay, the smooth bezel Black
Uh-huh.
Bay. I think that is going more for that style. The obvious disconnect with that model is that there is no date function on it. So how could it look like a date
That's
just if
why I
it's not a
think
date?
that looks like an
Yeah.
OP to me.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
well, yeah, but in the same breath, I think that we talked about this on the Rolex episode that the date just is basically just an enhanced OP, or the OP
Oh
is
yeah.
just like a watered down date just.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think the Royal is like it is in this really weird position with Tudor's catalog, because think about what works really well for Tudor are all the Black Bays, whether it's a diver, the GMTs, whatever. Those all work pretty great. The chronos are included in that. And then I think when you look at like the next most successful lineup, you say, okay, well, it's Pelagos, and there's a couple options there. And then when you go third, it's kind of open for all of these. You can say, okay,
Mhm.
it's the non-diver smooth bezel Black Bay, it's the Royal, but like the Royal, and granted, the non-diver Black Bay is kind of the same, where it's not very like I've never seen one in the wild,
No,
but I've
yeah.
also never seen a Royal. But when
Nope.
I look at them side by side, I just kind of think to myself, like, I can maybe see where Tudor was going with that design. They're looking at like an integrated bracelet that they don't want to copy AP. They don't want to copy anyone. So they made a unique design, but
Yeah.
I just don't prefer it. I think the
Yeah.
non-diver option, if I'm going to go for a Tudor that's not a Black Bay or a Pelagos or just a diver at all, easily I'm going to go Black Bay 36, because I think that's actually offered in, yeah, so that's offered in a 39 and a 41 too. So I keep
Mhm.
saying Black Bay 36. I think that's just what became popular. So that's why I'm also trying to say non-diver.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that Tudor have these two watches that neither one of them seem to be very successful. Neither one seemed to be very popular, but the Black Bay 36, like we just said, it's half the cost of the Rolex OP that no one can get.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
And I
almost like I feel like if you wanted to copy it but cheaper, you would go that route. But people don't
yeah,
even do that. So it's just weird that Tudor have these two flops,
yeah, they both kind of do. The Black Bay 36, if you look at those, the bracelet is the Jubilee bracelet one,
Oh yeah.
and then the bezel, the smooth bezel is the Datejust smooth
It's the
bezel.
smooth,
Is
yeah.
the dial? Yeah, it's more like an OP because it doesn't have a Datejust. The only thing I will say about these, which could turn people on or off, is they are a lot more expensive, just price point wise than the Royal. I mean, I'm looking here
Oh
at
yeah.
$8,000. I mean, yeah, those have diamonds on them, but even with just the gold at 5,300, 6,200, 6,200. I mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
those much more expensive than the Royal that's maxing out at like five tops. Most is in the 3 and 4 range. So do
Yeah.
keep that in mind. But no, I agree with you. The 36 does also look a lot. I've actually seen the 36 millimeter steel case, Black Bay 36 S&G, with that
Yeah.
looks just like again the Datejust I kind of like with the fluted bezel. I mean, I'm sorry, the Jubilee bracelet. So again, I think they both kind of do Datejust
Yeah.
s things. I think Tudor in general, all their dress watches, they know what they're shooting for, and I mean they kind of, but they can't carbon copy it, so they do something a little
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
but I think they're both great watches. I think the Black Bay 36 is definitely more popular than the Royal. The Royal is just kind of the stepchild, the redheaded stepchild of Tudor
Yeah.
and their dress watches. But it's different. I
I
don't know.
mean, hey, I think at some point we have to remember, like, since they are related in an obvious way to Rolex,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like they have to do stuff that's going to be similar enough but not too similar. And I can't fault them for taking a swing at the Royal.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't. It's not for me personally. It's not for some people. Some people are gonna love it. But I think it just at the end of the day, like
Yeah.
I could say the same thing about like the Aquaterra Shades collection. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty popular opinion. People, I don't think generally like the shades compared to the regular quote unquote Aquaterra.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I mean, every brand is going to do that. I mean, there are Pateks and APs out there that you've probably never even heard of. That if you know, if we showed you a picture of them, you'd be like, yeah, that's really ugly. But the
Yeah.
Royal Oak and the Nautilus are the game changers, you know, and so we
Yeah.
don't really look past those. So I think maybe that's kind of what's going on with this with Tudor, because it's weird that they have like these other collections that people are diehards for, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's these ones that they're just like, no,
Yep.
just no one gives it a second look.
Yeah.
So.
You got to keep innovating, and you will always have some flops when that
Yeah,
happens.
I
So
mean, it's like who cares? I mean, the Black Bay is that's the moneymaker. Like
yeah.
I don't even think Tudor care how well or poorly the Royal or the Black Bay 36 do. It's like they've got winners.
Yeah.
So
Well,
cool.
speaking of flops, let's go to the
Yeah.
opposite of what I think a flop is, and, and talk
Yeah.
about your last watch because I
Yeah.
love this thing.
Yeah, this thing's cool, man. So the last watch we're going to talk about is going to be the Heritage Black Bay, and I want to set the stage on this. So this watch originally released in 2012. This was the Black Bay that released in 2012 that started all of the Black Bays.
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest, or at least like one of the easiest ways to think about this is that if you have a number following the word the term Black Bay, you're in a different catalog. You're in a different collection. So Black Bay 54, Black Bay 58, Black Bay 41, 36, 31, so on and so forth. Right, all of those are in a different category. If you go to the Tudor website, you can find this watch by looking at the Black Bay period collection. So that's what released in 2012. This is the continuation of that. This is the watch that used to be called the Smiley, right? It had the rose logo on the dial. It had the semicircular font, the Smiley. So now that's been updated. Stylistically, it looks much more like the 54 and the 58. However, this is the only Tudor to offer, or sorry, the only Tudor diver version of a Black Bay, which offers the 5-link Jubilee style bracelet now. So any Black Bay followed by 54, 58, you're not going to be able to have that 5-link bracelet. And also, the burgundy, which is the black dial and red bezel combination of the Heritage Black Bay, is going to have that 5-link. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, but I just want to set the stage. Heritage Black Bay is the original from 2012. Only the 5-link comes in the burgundy, and none of that comes with the 58 and the 54 when it comes to 5-link. It's also, I think maybe just easiest to think about this watch as like the last original or the last remaining original Black Bay, because it's also the only one that remains in a 41 millimeter case size. So when the original diver came out, that was the 41 mil that was offered in like the black, the burgundy, the midnight blue, and so on. That was, of course, taken over by the Black Bay 58. We've talked about that at length. Now the Heritage remains the only one in the 40 millimeter case size. But now that comes also with an Oyster Flex option or Oyster Flex style option, the Oyster and the Jubilee style bracelet options. The new 54 also has a rubber strap, but for what that is worth, it also has one. But the 58, I don't think the 58 has that option yet. So lots of change there, and all that good stuff. So aside from that, I'm not going to go too deep into the history because we've already done that at length. We'll just do a very quick refresher here, and it goes something like this. Tudor used models like the Oyster Print Submariner, reference 7922 from 1954, and the 7924 reference from 1958 as the inspiration for the general Black Bay lineup and collections. That brought Tudor honestly back to relevancy in 2012. They were very dormant for a decade or so before then. And since then, obviously, we've talked about it. We've had the 58, we've had the Black Bay Sport models like the Chrono, the various GMTs, and now most recently, the 7922 reference inspired Black Bay 54, which conveniently David has already covered today. So, with all of that being said, let's dive into the Heritage Black Bay and some of the differences here. So, this is going to be stainless steel. Again, we just mentioned 41 millimeter. I couldn't actually find a case thickness on this thing, though. Water resistance can be 200 meters, and the manufacturer caliber in this particular model is the MT5602-U, and that is the master chronometer version. This caliber also going to beat at 4 hertz, 28.8 beats per hour, 70-hour power reserve. And the pricing option on this, not going to be too variable. For the 5-link bracelet option, you're going to be looking at $4,550 US. It's a few $100 less for the oyster and the rubber options. And then for the steel and oyster models, which is going to be the next most popular kind of lineup or design config, that's going to be $4,100. And so, yeah, I mean, in general, like, I think this is a great improvement to the Black Bay collection. We all know that the bracelet on that thing isn't the best. It's not the worst by any means. I kind of think, like, I mean, I've owned it for a couple years now. Do you think that riveted bracelet gets like a bad rap? Because I don't think it's like the most uncomfortable thing in the world. But
I
a lot of
like
people,
it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't mind it. I don't think it's, people are like, it's uncomfortable. I don't really think so. I mean, I don't
yeah,
notice it any different than my sub bracelet, which, I mean, I don't
right,
think oyster bracelets in general are not going to be the most comfortable, but just smacked my mic. But I don't know any different. I don't have a Jubilee
yeah,
bracelet. I have a Jubilee bracelet on one of my Versace watches that I think is the most comfortable bracelet ever, but I never wear it anymore. But
yeah,
it's a very comfortable bracelet. But I mean, it's not noticeably where I'm just like, my wrist
yeah.
hurts after wearing it.
You're not putting it
People
on,
that
and
complain about straps and bracelets being uncomfortable, I'm like, how? It
yeah,
doesn't make it's not like shoes that make your feet hurt. It's not a hat that makes your head hurt. It's something on your wrist. It
yeah.
doesn't ever make your wrist hurt. So I
There's
mean,
very few scenarios where it goes
yeah,
that far for me too. I'm
yeah.
like, I know, like,
I think it's great.
stylistically,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I love the stylus. I mean, this watch,
yeah,
I'll just chime in real quick. This is the coolest watch that Tudor. I would trade in my Navy one probably for this one,
mm,
only against the fact that I would then not have a blue diver, which I like. But but I mean, this watch is awesome. I mean, the black gilded dial, hands are great with the red. It really pops. It's just crisp.
yep.
It's
I
very
love the
stark.
combo with the red.
Yeah, I think it's just the amount of dressy. You can dress it up, dress it down. I mean, that's a summer watch, but it also can be a Christmas watch and be a winter watch. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just awesome. So
yeah.
this is my favorite of their releases this year by far.
It's giving GMT Master 2 vibes.
Hmm.
That's what it's giving. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
With the 5-link Jubilee style bracelet, you've got a big pop of red on the bezel, which, generally speaking, on Black Bays, you just don't see a lot of color. The 54 has only a black. The
yeah,
58 has a red. It's just not nearly as popular.
yeah,
You're mainly going to see a black bezel and a blue bezel when it comes to any Black Bay config. So the red being there is fun. It's nice. Like you said, the combo of that gilt accented dial going along with it is just, yeah, it's a sexy, sexy watch. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about the bracelet. We talked about this being a huge upgrade, which is great. I'm not sure that this fits like the dive watch motif, like having a Jubilee bracelet on a diver.
yeah,
But nonetheless, I think it's cool to see Tudor continue to integrate some of these Rolex-esque offerings, like the Jubilee and the Oyster Flex type offerings into their catalog. Um, that was like one of our only gripes before, and we talked about that back in February on the first episode. Like the T-Fit system before, we're getting those now. I guess my only continued gripe would be that, like, I don't know why we're getting them in some options and not others. Um, like
yeah.
with a Rolex, the Jubilee is available on all your GMTs and none of
Hmm.
your subs. Makes
Yeah,
sense,
that
right?
doesn't
Why
make
is it
any sense for
available?
me.
Yeah, why is it
Either.
available only on the Heritage and not the others? Why is the Black Bay 54, granted it's new, but why is that only in black? So that's my only gripe. I think Tudor going in the right direction for sure.
Yeah,
But just the general confusion about, like, which of the Black Bays does this bracelet come on? The fact that there's, like, you have a Black Bay 58, 54, 30. There's too much. I think it's too busy.
yeah.
But that's
Well,
my only
because it's
complaint.
just hard not to. I mean, I'm trying to think of a lot of the times it is watches, but there are other things you're buying that's like you want to build something, but you can't have it perfect. It's like, why not? Why do you not put Jubilee bracelets on all your Bay collections, your 58, your
Yeah.
54, your just Black Bay Heritage? I mean, like, why? I know you can do it.
I
We all know you can do it. So I mean, other than just to say no, you have to do this, but I don't know. It's crazy.
The only thing I can think of is the fact that the 54 and 58 and so on are designed after those old school references, which obviously did not offer a Jubilee bracelet. I can obviously see that as being the reason, but
Jubilee's
but in
been
the
around
same
for
light,
Rolex for 50 years, so I mean, come on, it ain't like there was
well,
no Jubilees back in those days,
well,
like
but
back in the 80s.
well, true, but that's just the case for the subs. So it's not the
Yeah,
case for the GMT. So again, I'm like, why does this
yeah,
one go not on the vintage inspired one, but on the heritage? Which let's all remember, the heritage is just a combination of they just looked at their old catalog. So it's just a little peculiar, I think, from Tudor.
yeah.
Again, good direction. I like the improvements. Maybe I'm just a little confused on how they're choosing to execute. But all in all, it's like you said, it's a sexy watch. Um, and there's nothing bad about getting better movements and additional options for an extra $100 because that's what the Black Bay 58, for example, has increased to. In 2 years, it's increased $100. The Heritage Black Bay has not really increased much. So
Yeah.
all in all, good things. Tudor giving us more options. They're not ripping us off on cost. It's just a little bit of a weight game with the AD now. But other
That'll
than
change
that,
though. Yeah.
yeah, just give that a year and you're pretty much good. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, cool. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. We hit all the new ones, and I mean, all these are very great watches.
yep,
But anyways, yeah, I mean, these are the new releases. I mean, guys, tell us definitely what you think about them, which one's your favorite, and we'll put up a poll or two for you guys to interact with us. We love hearing feedback and everything from you guys. So just keep that coming, and
yeah,
don't forget to follow us on social medias. Everything's at Strap and Link. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It's free. Do it all. We keep saying it. I mean, it doesn't cost y'all anything, and it means a lot for us. So,
agreed. And also, let us know what you think about this episode type. Obviously, we are going to cover brands and their history, but we can't help, and we don't want to help the fact that these brands are going to keep releasing new stuff,
yeah,
new models. So let us know what you thought about this kind of format. Just kind of introing the piece and the kind of history behind that and why maybe it's been released now and all of that good stuff. So,
yeah,
yeah, like David said, give us a follow, interact with us over there, send us a message. Don't forget strapandlink@gmail.com. Feel free to send us in any of your watch stories. If you got a new piece, if you traveled, picked up something, if you lost a watch, if you were handed down a watch, anything that you think is cool, worth
yeah.
sharing, let us know. Obviously, we'll protect you guys. We're not going to give your name and address and all that good stuff where all these watches are. So don't fear about that. We'll obviously keep you guys protected. So yeah, with that being said, David, had fun doing this, man.
Yeah,
It's a cool episode. It was good to knock out the first kind of update, and I know we both love Tudor, so it was really fun to do it.
yeah.
So
And we'll
yeah,
be
man.
back in a couple weeks with a brand new brand.
Yeah, new brand. We'll probably do every other month, maybe one of these updates, and we'll kind of keep them running, 9-10 months lag behind. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to keep them too close together. So yeah, definitely, probably at least 2 new brands coming up, and then maybe we'll take a look back at either Grand Seiko or I think Tissot and Long Jeans. Those would be the 3 kind
Yeah.
of candidates for the update. So we'll take a look at those. And
Grand Seiko always releases new crap every month, so there'll never be
yep,
any shortage of that.
no,
Long Jeans and Tissot, there's probably a few less things to talk about.
yeah, for
Maybe
sure.
and honestly, if we haven't talked about a brand in a while, me and Brett haven't talked about this, but we can even combine, be like, hey, Tissot and Longines, there's both releasing one new
Yeah,
watch this year, so
yeah.
just kind of go through some of those smaller ones that maybe don't do as much. But I promise you, Grand Seiko, there'll be no shortage. It'll probably be almost too much to
Yeah,
talk about.
honestly,
We
the
still
Grand
won't cover it
Seiko,
all.
yeah, the Grand Seiko one, we could probably do 8 watches and we'd still be 50% of their new releases this year. So that's just
Yeah,
kind of the
and
nature
they're
of the
all
game.
limited editions. So if you
Exactly.
don't buy them, you will never see it again. But they
SOL.
won't hold the value like a Rolex would still. So it's like, God,
Yeah, they don't lose a lot, but it never really increases, but they don't
Yeah.
lose too much.
I still
15,
want that
20%
Whirlpool
attrition.
watch.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still
All right,
want that
guys.
Whirlpool watch that we talked about. But we'll talk about that on our Grand Seiko episode. All right, guys. Thank you.
Indeed. All right, guys.